Welcome to the Incredible Machines podcast, where we sit down with incredible people doing incredible things. In this episode, we speak with Travis Gale, an adventurer, entrepreneur, and author, whose story of cycling around the world at 18 is as bold as it is inspiring. What stands out about Travis isn't just what he's done, but how he thinks, reflects, and grows through each challenge. We talk about how you need to embrace the middle, not just the finish, how connection can be everything, and how setbacks are teachers. This episode is packed with insight for everyone facing a big challenge, rethinking success, or learning to find meaning in the process. Let's dive in with the incredible Travis Gale. If you could go back to before you started off, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, I think the tour taught me the difference between getting fixated on the end goal versus embracing the journey and being present in the moment. And, I think when you go into something, you have a very definite expectation of how it's going to work and where you're going to end up. And I mean, if I just link it to my entrepreneurship career, it just doesn't work like that. So you end up trying to force the finishes. And then you, in the moment, can get quite frustrated and when the challenges arise and when the roadblocks arise. But I would tell my 16-year-old self that those are actually what it's about. It's not about, the end is just a transition into another start, but you're always in the middle. If you can embrace those challenges and those roadblocks, that's where the character develops. That's where you learn more about yourself. That's where you transform. Because the journey is all around transformation, isn't it? It's like, so you become a better person if you can sit in that space. And then at the same time, it ends up pointing you into other possibilities that you couldn't imagine. And even the cycle tour, I mean, I was just a 17-year-old at school, dreaming about doing something with my life, and then met Steve. Steve asked me to do this tour. I mean, that wasn't a plan that I had in my head, And so that. Don't close yourself up to these opportunities by being too fixated on what you think is the right path.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then we get to the day 5 later on, and I'll talk about that. I had this when I was reading your book. It reminded me of I got something from when my stints in Hawaii, and I like to work in threes. And the 3 things I have is like be good, have fun, enjoy. And I think it's all fun. Like, this is all fun. Some of it's difficult fun, and some of it's really interesting fun. Like, I think this part of my experience is really interesting fun. Can't be in Hawaii paddling out in pipeline and not think it's fun. Like, the paddle out is part of the fun. It's the difficult part. But it's still, you're in Hawaii. It's like, so that's why I loved that. Like, that was my kind of middle. I remembered, that it's rough, man. Like, it's you get smashed and then sent back to the beach, sent packing, and then but you remind yourself, where am I, and like, what am I doing? And it's just like that. So I resonated. I loved it. You surf, and you're born, bred Durban, and you said, well, do you want to take us from the beginning of the timeline?
Yeah, sure. So born 81, a Durban boy through and through. Schooled in Durban, ended up doing my high school career at Northwood. I suppose part of my story is that my parents got separated quite young, so I was living predominantly with my mom. And as I said, going into my high school, wrestling a lot with what to do with my life. My mom was at UKZN, so I had this free education lined up, which was an easy step into that world. But I wrestled with wanting to make a difference, but not knowing how. And so in my schooling career, I got involved in a church called Durban North Methodist, and this guy had arrived from Johannesburg as a youth pastor. And I suppose I was this kid who was just trying to figure out life. I'd been just navigating my schooling career. And he was a real mentor to me, so helped me with a lot of things, just stuff that you wrestle with at the age of 16. I don't think we need to go into all of that. But at the same time, we connected around cause. And he himself, and I think this is why I resonated with him so much, is that he had grown up in a boys' home. So he knew his parents, but they weren't able to look after him. He had to grow up in this boys' home in Cape Town. So by the time I met him, he had already ridden this bicycle that he had from Joburg to Cape Town and Joburg to Durban, and then Durban to Cape Town to raise funds for vulnerable children. So there was this upfront connection around making a difference. But then, unbeknown to me, he was planning his biggest tour. And that's where in the July of my matric year, he sat me down and he said, "This is what I'm going to do. And do you want to do it with me?" You know. And I think now I only understand, having had kids, what it meant for me to go back to my mom, who was a single mom, looking after 2 boys. And I literally go and say to her, "Listen, do you mind if I go and ride a bicycle around the world next year?" You know, my daughter's 12. She comes to me in 5 years' time. It's a huge ask, but she graciously said yes. You know, you got to do this, and so that was my launch pad into this tour, which then took me into the cycle tour, which I suppose we'll get into.
Just on that, so I remember he asked you, I think you said at a coffee shop in New Pier, he proposed it, and then you just said, yeah. It actually doesn't, in the book, I couldn't see where he asked you. He just said, "This is what I'm doing," and you just said yes. I don't know if it was an actual question. That's why I reread it and looked for it. I found that interesting. And then you had, it sounded like he had done the scoping exercise earlier on when he asked, "Does anyone ride a bicycle?" And you're the only one that put your hand up.
Yes, that was a classic moment. We're in one of those youth dinners when he arrives, you know, and he's like, who does what? But funny enough, I had just done a ride with a friend because I had a mountain bike, but I wasn't a cyclist. And sporting career at school, I mean, I was 7th team rugby. I was no jock. Like I was a bit nowhere, you know. But I had just done a ride with a mate from Umhloti to Umhlanga. And I remember we got a puncture in Umhlanga, or on Umhloti side, and I tried to fix this thing, and I absolutely butchered the tire. And then I pushed it back to Umhlanga, but this was like a week before he arrived. And so when he asked that question, my hand just sort of shot up.
It was very much top of mind.
Yeah, and I don't know if he was looking for someone to join in then, but I think obviously he would have made the decision based on the connection that we had. But and he literally did take me down. It was the old New Pier coffee shop. We sat down. He pitched this tour to me and just said, "Hey, if you want to join me, I think it'd be good." So it was the question, and I immediately said yes. But you know, I had to go and do my checks and balances and ask other people.
And then you said now going to your mom and asking, and it is different with daughters, but even I imagine with a son, like I eventually traveled. When I was in my early 20s, and I'm in my early 40s, guys, to give that away now. That's 20 years ago, and I've only just realized how dangerous the world is traveling. Like it's just a crazy thing. I don't know if I'd be able to do like what your mom did, like for my sons.
Yeah,
it's incredible. Like.
Yeah, and she had raised me to be responsible by nature of our family situation, you know. So early on, taught me how to drive. I think I just clicked into that gear. But I suppose she just knew that she had to let go and that she had to trust that this was going to be okay, especially because we would be riding bikes. So there was added vulnerability. I mean, we were going to be sleeping on the side of the road. There wasn't a definite, we're going there, we're staying in this hotel, we're going to be here between these dates. I'm just going to land in Perth and we're going to ride across Australia for 2 months and like no hotels booked, nothing, you know. So I guess we're all going to have to get to that point in our lives with our own children, because the gift that it was to me is the same gift that I want to give to my children, but I won't give them that if I hold on to them.
I love that call to adventure, like an Abrahamic sort of, I don't know if it fits exactly like that in that story, but that call to adventure. And then, so you started, I love the Paris. I made a comment, actually, I've got a couple of
Paris.
It definitely wasn't named by anyone that had been to Paris.
I believe it's improved vastly since then.
Yeah, I've actually got to pull my notes up. But because I highlighted a bunch of things that stood out, but that, in I don't know if you, in the preparation, that was your matric year. It made me think about my I celebrated for about probably a week solid when I got my matric exemption. People must have thought like, gee, this guy was dull. Hey, well, every time that people were asking, why are you guys having such a big night? And we're like, yeah. My nickname was Oros. It was John or Oros. Oros got his exemptions. Like, yeah, but you celebrated that 3 nights ago. So you got that while you were on the road, actually.
Got a call on the road, yeah.
Back to the prep. I don't know if there was anything that stood out there. You talk about the book is called The Middle. The prep is even before the beginning. It's like that, getting you, like you said, it's the transition in. It's always, we're always in the middle. So it's some sort of middle.
Yeah.
But was there anything that stood out in prep for you?
Yeah, 2 things. I think one is the actual physical prep and I suppose the lack of it. I mean, Steve was experienced, but I think in hindsight, we were probably quite naive as to how much was going to go into this. So the amount that I could actually cycle with exams and everything else going on was relatively minimal. And I don't know if it's in the book, but we had quite a funny moment when we decided to cycle to Maritzburg. I'm talking like a month and a half, 2 months out from leaving to cycle around the world. And leaving home, I think we got to that bridge as you start climbing the M19 by Papua Golf Course. Broken, absolutely broken. We 20, 30 Ks into this ride. And just how hard it was to get to Maritzburg that day was a real eye-opener. It was the first time riding with the bags, putting some weight in them. So just comrades this weekend, I think will be a stark reminder of that journey, because that was the first journey, Durban to Pietermaritzburg on the bikes. This is it. We're doing this. Actually, we're grossly underprepared here. This is going to be interesting. And then the second thing was the most daunting thing that I had to do was speak in front of my peers. So I had to go to Fatima and I had to go to the girls' high schools and then I had to go to my own high school and just share what we were doing. And I would stand up with my message. I'm an ordinary guy. You can do extraordinary things as an ordinary bloke. But my own school, Northwood, was probably the most daunting. And what struck me after that was the amount of negative feedback that I got. The guy who got ducks came to me and said, you're going to be a year behind your friends at varsity. You damaging your career. Somebody else came up to me and said, there's no ways you're going to be able to do this, just knowing my physicality. So I got a lot of negative. It was the first time. I suppose up until then I'd been surrounded by my tribe, the people that believed in me, but now I'd exposed myself to this wider group. And a lot of people had gone, that's not going to happen, And that's when I truly had to hold on to the belief that I had in myself to be able to do this. But at the same time, having these physical experiences of riding and going, so you enter into this with, can I make it to the end? Have I got what it takes? And that then became the wrestle that's happened throughout, and especially on day 5,
So yeah, there's a lot there. So I want to go back. The first thing I had this pegged as like the public speaking, because throughout the book, you're just promoting, and this 17-year-old now 18, and you are going and raising funding, but you're speaking publicly all the time.
Yeah.
So how did you do that? Like, how did you transition into that? Like, I can understand why it was more difficult for me, it would have been more difficult at my school because they all knew me. And whereas I could go to another school and I could put the mask on, I'm this adventurer, and that might have been a little bit easier, but still, I wouldn't have known that when I was 18 or 17 or when you were doing it. How did you do it?
Well, the tour was to raise funds for children living with and affected by HIV and AIDS, and it was connected to McCaw's Hospital. And McCaw's Hospital at the time had a really dynamic coordinator who basically adopted the tour as his project to run for the entire duration of the tour. So between him and Steve, they were setting up these opportunities, SABC, radio. And I guess Steve, being a little bit more experienced, was able to coach me into this and say, hey, your job is to simply share your part of the story. And at the time, there was a little bit around the fact that I could become like the youngest to do it. There was a break in the route, as you would have read, when we couldn't get into Sudan and cycle down the Nile. And so that was my job, was just to pitch up, and it was often interviews with Steve. And so I just had to share my piece. And so as I became more comfortable with my piece, I was able to take part in these. And so that, I suppose, developed the confidence, because on tour we had to do a lot of talking. I guess I was sharing the same story and the same themes, and it was just layering that topic.
So it sounds like kind of a soft landing or an a relatively easy entry point for someone to get into, and then repetition, the 1,000 hours, like getting it in, like getting the reps in.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then I heard you say that you put this dream out there, and the haters gonna hate. That people actually came in that were, and you consider them they were part of your tribe, not how you explain it later in the book, but like there were definitely people that were in that would speak to you, and they came and said, "No, it's not going to happen. It's not the right thing. What are you doing?" Like,
yeah.
So those are, and I can imagine those people. Those are the voices that you need on the day 5. What I imagine the most difficult thing is to get, for me anyway, is like on the day 5, as I understand you explain it, and I think we'll get there when you can unpack it a bit more. But when you want the voices cheering, like it's fine to have the voices, but like have them cheering. And when you know they're not, that's difficult. Like that's incredibly difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, and you've got to choose which voices you listen to. But that, in theory, is one thing, but in practice can sometimes be hard, especially if it's someone that you potentially respect, look up to, or someone who's in an area that's, for example, a sportsman who knows what it takes to do these things, and then they've got a critical voice. So it's that wrestle between the inner voice and then these external voices, because your mom will always tell you you're going to be wonderful. But and it's you want to hang on to that, and you're grateful for it. But it's amazing how we sometimes actually lean into those other voices that don't know us too well, and we give more gravitas to that than we sometimes do to the ones that do. And that's been a big lesson for me, Yeah. Who do I listen to and what do I pay attention to?
Remind me of this. I saw an interview with Elon Musk. I know it's very controversial. Probably still when this comes out, you will be controversial. But it was an old interview because I've watched his personal brand develop, and I've been very interested by that. And one of the things that I saw, one of the first times I saw emotion, he had just done a software update and like a firmware update, and there was emotion had been added. It was seriously, it was like the first time I'd really seen him get emotional about something. And he was relaying to the interviewer about an experience with Buzz Aldrin, who was like one of his heroes. And Buzz Aldrin just said what he's doing with Mars and SpaceX and stuff is nonsense, and he shouldn't do it. And he just criticized them heavily. And he got tears. Like this hero of his had it was one of the most difficult things to do. But then he'd obviously, he's still carrying it in some form because but he was able to park it.
Yeah.
And then move and get where he is now. So he's like, yeah.
Yeah. A friend of mine does work with like the Brene Brown and the vulnerability stuff, and she speaks about it. And you step into this arena, and there's these seats, this auditorium, and there are these cheap seats, where people are just hurling insults at you. But that metaphor is nice because the vulnerability of standing on that stage with all these people looking at you, and I suppose it was just a general dismissing of the fact that this is actually going to happen. And so life carries on.
So you can, and there's a way to be, like I said, a way to be defiant and just go like, nah, I'm going to prove you wrong. Oscar Chalupsky, who we had on previously, he was very much that. He's like, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'll be on the rugby team. I mean, he's doing it now. I saw an incredible update from Oscar, and I'm so happy to see it that he's beating stuff. And but he was just defiant. Like it was like that actually was more fuel for him, but that's not for everyone. One of the best examples I've seen, it's a UFC fighter. I've got UFC as my dirty pleasure. But Usman, I don't know if you're familiar with any of the UFC fighters.
No.
Nigerian Nightmare, I think his nickname was, but or is, and very much has a podcast too. But he's so interesting, and he had this fight that was against Kobe Covington or something like this. So this is like American dream, like blue-eyed American guy, and this Nigerian guy that was American. He sounded American. He was everything. He just was representing Nigeria and that sort of stuff. And the nickname Nigerian Nightmare. And like it was very, very heated. It was like quite a conflict. Like it was old, like the sort of race started creeping in and all that sort of nasty stuff. And fortunately, I was a Usman fan, or am an Usman fan, and I think he broke his jaw in the second round or something. Covington's jaw in the second round, but he carried on going. And then these old American flags, those like southern flags that they have, I forget what the name that they have of those flags, started creeping into the arena like this in the cheap seats. And they started going, USA, USA. And an interviewer, Usman won the fight. An interviewer relayed this to him later on. And he said, what was going through your head when you had broken his jaw and then suddenly the crowd started going USA, USA. And he said, he went something like this. He said, like, it was amazing. Like, that they were cheering for me. Like, I'm the American dream. And they were cheering for me. And, like, I came here, I'm an immigrant, and now I've got my green card, and and the interview was, but he just changed his mind. He was able to change his mind, and they were cheering for him like that. And that's how he got through it. He changed, they were just cheering for him, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if it was a defiant thing for me I probably wasn't going out to prove anyone wrong. For me, it was probably about just being secure in what was my journey.
Yeah.
But those voices at times do also temper you, am I prepared for this? Am I giving it enough attention? It can be helpful.
Yeah, it sounds like you talk about it. There's a chapter when it's an openness trait that I get, that obviously you're an entrepreneur too. So it's very valuable as an entrepreneur to be as open, and we are generally open, to listen to certain things and heed warnings. I think it's on the Kilimanjaro climb, like essentially.
Yeah.
But before we get there, so I don't know if we want to tackle that. So all the way up, it looked like obviously at Pietermaritzburg, it did something because you ante up, like you upskilled there, and then the thing got to day 5. Are we going to talk about that day 5 experience?
No, sure. So, I mean, the Maritzburg was just a training route, but we started in Johannesburg, 1st of January, just finished school. I remember we had an interview with Mark Gilman from 5FM. And there was a few people outside it was at Bedford View, a few people, friends and family. Off we went. But because we had been on Gilman and an interview on SABC, people had heard the story. So for 4 days, we were really in that sort of state of euphoria, and people were stopping. And I write in the book about that moment when that woman saw us at a petrol station and literally went home to fetch her kids and bring them back to take a photo. And I was like, wow. So you get wrapped up, and it's this euphoria that starts at the start of any journey. And everything was going well. And we got to Bloem on the 4th day, and the 5th day was a ride from Bloem to Tromsburg, which had one significant shift in that this is the first day we were heading onto the N1. And so we were leaving the burbs, leaving those roads.
Back roads you had taken before.
Yeah, all the back roads, Parys, Vereeniging, Kroonstad, and then into Bloem. And I just remember waking up that day and something felt different. It was just a different atmosphere. The weather was different. Something had shifted. And you sort of cycle out of Bloem, and then you turn right onto the N1. And I just got this headwind, and it was hot, and then we just on the side of the highway, and these cars are just screaming past us. No one's stopping, and you realize this is it. You're in the now I know to be the middle. But because of my body, I was feeling quite broken. And I guess 4 days had caught up with me. We'd done like 400 Ks. And because of the lack of physical preparation, I was struggling. Steve was strong. He was 10 years older than me. He had done something like this before. And so from a self-management point of view, I was battling. And at some point, I just put my bike down. I said, I don't think I can get to Tromsburg. And that's when the voices start to come up that were negative. Maybe they were right. And so I was quite broken, and I had to make a choice. I had to just get back on the bike and keep the bike moving forward. But that day was horrendous. I think I moved very slowly. And when I eventually took the off-ramp at Pietermaritzburg, I think Steve could see I was nowhere, you know. And so I call that a day 5. And, you know, the insight for me has been that every single start is followed by a day 5. I've realized now, I think it's on the front of the book, when the euphoria fades away and you come face to face with what you signed up for, and it wasn't what you expected to see, that's when you're in the middle. And so now I'm 5 days into a round-the-world cycle tour, and I haven't even got to Cape Town, and I'm doubting myself about my ability to even get to Australia and America. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, but day 6 was actually longer.
Day 6 was longer. It was harder. We had lightning, hail. So if environmentally, it was harder, but we had that interaction with Kassi on the night of day 5. So Steve had cycled this route before. He had organized us to stay with a NG Kerk dominee by the name of Kassi van den Berg. I'd never met him in my life. Him and his wife, Amy, took us in and gave us dinner. And then that night, he took us out to the stoep that's on, you know, like this Karoo setting.
Yeah.
I will forever refer to it as Kassi's stoep. And he said to us, just tell me why you're here. Why these 2 boys from Durban here in Pietermaritzburg. And got to share the story. And the epiphany for me in that moment was how disconnected I had become from the story in the midst of the tough terrain. And so as I shared the same stuff that I'd been talking about for months, the tours to raise funds, the kids that I'd met, my values, my upbringing, the desire to do something extraordinary, it almost refueled me. So it's like the grit returned because I was reconnecting with my story. And so I speak about the difference between riding connected to your story, which we did on day 6, compared to riding disconnected from your story, which I did on day 5. And how important it is to sit on Kassi's stoep metaphorically and reconnect with your story. And that's why I'll go to the mountains every now and then and just go and hike, do something. We just go. And when I ask people, when do you sit on Kassi's stoep? It's been ages. Lost all sense of meaning, purpose, vision, values. It's gone. I'm just riding this sort of treadmill, you know. So yeah, that was the day 5, day 6 moment. And then the day 5s that we had from there, we just had to sit on Kassi's stoep again and remind ourselves. And that gave us the fuel to pick it up the next day.
Yeah, that's incredible. I like it. It reminded me, actually, and you've just corrected my thought here, but I don't know if you know about that. There's a scientific study about the amount of, I don't know if it's resilience, but they're done with mice and they drown them. They sit them in water and they swim and they time how long they can swim for. Which just sucks to be a mouse in the world. But anyway, I'm not approving of it, but just telling the story that I've heard. And they would last like 5 minutes or something like that before they'd dip under, and then they'd be they'd be rescued. And but that was when they were going to drown. Like they lasted 5 minutes. They take the same mice that have been rescued and they put them back in the water. And how long do you think they swam for? It was. I can get the numbers.
Maybe
it's way longer.
Yeah.
It's way longer. And it's hope. It was hope, that thing is. So I thought it was that, but it actually sounds like, and maybe there's a form of it. It's like your connection reminds you of your story and gives you a hope that it feeds into it somehow. But I love the way you've unpacked that now. You want to continue with so you make it to Cape Town now.
Yeah.
I think we go through the whole book because I want people to buy the book and read the book. It's like, that's not what this is for. It's like, but from Cape Town, was it Australia next?
Yeah. Yeah, and that was when I really felt like I come on an adventure here. I mean, Australia was very sort of similar terrain, but we were in the outback. We were cycling between what we call road stops. So it's literally just a petrol station with some of them a little bit bigger with maybe a campsite and a restaurant, but just dotted through the Nullarbor. The longest distance between 2 of them would have been about 190 k's and the shortest distance maybe 60 to 80. but you're just out there with the truckies, and it's just you and the elements. And so I felt like it was a real adventure now. And at times we would make it to the road station, or we would just camp on the side of the road. But Australia was a solid 2 months of just crossing from one side to the next. And I think that was where we really cemented the fortitude and I suppose the rhythm that you get into, because when you're starting it, you're figuring it out, and you're even figuring each other out. And there was still a connection with a cell phone at that time to home, and family would phone. But now you're in Australia, you're on your own, you're crossing a continent, you're on the outback dealing with the elements. And we really got the weather wrong. I mean, the fact that we crossed Australia February, March, I can't tell you the flies, the heat, the work. So it was wrestling with the elements to get across that country.
You said that the cork hat made sense. Now you totally understood why they had the corks on their hats.
There were days we couldn't stop to just urinate on the side of the road because the amount of flies that would consume you.
Oh, really?
And that were all over you looking for moisture. It was just incredible.
And that seems like that stretch you talk about, the Nullarbor. Is it Nullarbor?
Yeah, the Nullarbor.
Nullarbor stretch. And it's where milestones sort of kick in, and you explain milestones within and how that works.
Yeah, there was a day. So we had not an accident, but on a particular day we had cycled out of a road station, and I snapped probably about 12 of my spokes. And so we had a 3-day delay getting that sorted. I had to bus 500 k's back to Coolgardie to get to a bike shop. And so we needed to catch up. And so we decided we were going to have a big day. It was going to be 191 k's through to the next station. But unbeknown to us, that particular day was going to include Australia's longest, straightest road. So we came up on the sign, and it just said, Australia's longest, straightest road, 90 miles straight. So what's that? It's like about 146.6 k's of just dead straight road. And it was... And I had to figure out a mental approach to get through that because, no turning, the same terrain the whole way through. But that was when I noticed on the side of the road that they've got these 5K markers, these little blue signs every 5Ks. And so I worked out how many there were going to be. It's like going to be 30 of these signs. And then I started counting down. And it's an odd thing, I suppose it's to do with chunking. It's that idea of 30 is far easier than 146. So I've got to 29 and I've only got 29 left, even though it's exactly the same thing. And that's when I learned about these like mini milestones all add up. So even in writing the book, I just sat down and said, what are my mini milestones? I've got to source a publisher. I've got to write an introduction. And then when I got the publisher, I write chapter 1, chapter 2. So I set up the milestones. But the nice thing about those little blue milestones is that when you hit it, you celebrate, So it's like, hey, well done. Pat yourself on the back, and you've reached the milestone. So you're getting that little dopamine rush. So you're not just fixated on the end goal, but you've got all these celebrations along the way. And then over time, they just aggregate. Mm. So when I run 100 mile now, I'll count how many aid stations there are. It's generally 12. And so that's all I've got to do is run past 12 aid stations. Doesn't sound like much, but mentally it's a far better way to do it.
Yeah, that Gordon Reed, we had Gordon Reed on previously too, and his case study was Jesse, what's his name, Jesse Runner, American guy that's also like an influencer, entrepreneur and that sort of stuff. And he talked about how he doesn't run marathons; he runs 5Ks, just multiple times 5Ks in a stretch. And it was so that I find that amazing. Those blue dots or blue signs that she's talked about. So cool. And so I've lived in Australia for a short stint of my life while I was studying in the gaps and that sort of stuff. And it's not, I can't imagine camping on the side of the road. And it's just like, just the insects can kill you. So how was that? Like, what was this sort of highlights there?
Yeah, so it's hard stone. They've got a lot of crows. They got into your head, They're sitting in the tree. It's that squawking. It's quite. But then the kangaroos were quite a thing. I mean, they sit on the bitumen at night. People crossing Australia would have a rhubarb on. You're gonna hit them. So you would cycle through graveyards of just kangaroos that had been slaughtered by trucks and cars crossing the continent. And then that brings on the stench. It brings on the flies. So in combination, it meant some of the days were quite intense, you know. And the flies would live on your backpack, you know, so they were just taking turns to walk around your face. We used to try and shake them off just before a big truck would come past, so the wind shear would. But in a way, that almost helped a bit with the distraction, you know. So what is my fly mitigation strategy for the next 20 Ks and waiting for this big road train to come through? You got to play those games, you know, because you can't think yourself through these days all the time. There's going to be the boredom.
Yeah.
I suppose that is the lesson. Hey, try and teach to my kids is what are you going to do in the boredom and what are you going to do in the tough moments? Because that's generally where people are bailing or looking for some sort of entertainment. But then you're not going to get to the significant finishes, you know. Mm-hmm. So you're grateful for the insects and the flies and the kangaroos.
And I heard you say there were many celebrations. I don't think we celebrate enough. Maybe as humans, and definitely not as entrepreneurs. We don't celebrate.
No one celebrates enough. I mean, all my work in corporate, I talk about a culture of celebration, and I ask how often are we celebrating? We're not. We're hitting finishes, we're pushing reset, and we're going. And even in marriage, you know, you start to lose that. You don't celebrate anniversaries anymore. You don't celebrate the milestones, and just go out and be. And linked to Kassi's tip, I think those are the moments where you get to reflect. Like, look how far we've come. We've got to do it, you know. It's just so important, and we're losing it because of pace. And we're always chasing, like, what's the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And this beautiful story behind is lost.
Yeah. I love it. I have these days, sometimes I wake up and I realize, like, I have everything. And then those are the best days. Actually, I still have to go do the thing. It's not like I work this thing, abundance mindset. I love but manifest your abundance and all that. It's quite interesting to listen to people do that. And that's true. I feel like sometimes I wake up in the morning, I have everything, and then at 9 o'clock I get a new client call, and and the day just goes like that. But I think the shadow of abundance, it might be entitlement. And I'm very aware of that, because I do know that the world owes me absolutely nothing and will return me to dust. So I need to go and make sure, if no one's calling me, I'm calling them and making that happen. But and it sounds like that's exactly, you just go get it. I think, like, let's go the whole time. You met the Dutch couple, if I remember, on that bike ride too. One thing before we get to the Dutch couple, because that's networking. I wanted to talk about I think it's your spokes broke, because, and I'm not a bicycle person, although in Hawaii you have to ride a bike a fair bit. That was fun at the beginning, and then I eventually got it, but not long distance. But bikes, so the load, you worked out that the load was too heavy, and that was what was breaking the spokes. I actually felt like that was like metaphoric as well.
It's been huge for me in life. I mean, now, so I sort of swapped the bike for endurance trail running, and like the bike, the pack is on your back. And so the constant thing is, how can you run as light as possible? So you're always weighing up, like, what do you need, you know? But then, you know, with endurance, that's fine, okay? I just got in with too much stuff. But in life, like, how can you keep light, you know? And something I try and instill in my kids, like, do we need all this stuff to live well? I mean, I learned you can travel around the world with a bike and a couple pairs of shirts, some pots and pans, you know. You don't need a lot to have an incredible adventure, and yet we are somehow caught in this trap of we need a lot in order to be happy. We need a lot in order to live significantly, and then we also have to show other people that we have a lot. And yet there's some people out there that are living incredibly well with little. So yeah, the more you run with, the more it weighs you down, and then there's consequences, you know.
That's interesting. I love that take. I also interpreted that as, like, knowing your limits, like, because I think we also tend to, potentially myself, as again, you see the world as you are, not as it is. So it's good to hear that explanation. But you can take on too much too. And that's when stuff starts to break down, like body, or, I mean, it's an extension of your body, the bike, the travel. But it was just to me, it was also telling me, like, know your limits and what you need to take.
I suppose also in your 30s, you just about the middle of entrepreneurship and the middle of parenting and marriage and whatnot, but you do enter into a very driven decade. And I'm finding in my 40s, I'm starting to ask myself, what do I need to focus on? And I think that's a good point. It's not just stuff, but it's also what you put your hands to. And quality versus quantity becomes a big point to focus on, yeah.
And then the networking part, just to try back there, because we went the Dutch couple, and you along the way I picked up that you were meeting people and thinking of your future self. So it was quite interesting to have that foresight where you go, you network with people and then connect with them and where they lived. So they were on tour and you were on tour, and so you go meet with them and then have a place to stay potentially, or that was kind of a lesson I thought on networking and the power of that. Or was
absolutely. So that's under the Find Your Tribe piece, and I think the tour, because you're on tour, you've got your tribe that's sort of sitting behind you as a team. So if you had to sort of metaphorically place it into one's everyday life, you generally have the people that you work with. You've got your tribe here. But as you put yourself out there, you're going to meet people. And the interesting about the Dutch couple was that we had gone to the local minister's house and asked her if we could stay there. And she said no. Because Steve was a Methodist minister, so he used to use that, go to the Methodist church. Hey, I'm a Methodist minister. No. So tail between our legs, quite deflated. Another night on the campsite. And then there's this Dutch couple who end up making us dinner, and we connected with them. And then we stayed with them in Germany, and then they hooked us up with friends. And the power of this was actually in America, and that's every single night we were taken in by someone, didn't pitch a tent once. So I have found the most significant thing about the cycle tour, besides what I saw and where I went and who I spoke to, was probably the way strangers played a role in getting us to the finish. That for me was it's just magic, because it's a complete anomaly that you should be in that place at that time and meet that person. And then they would play a role in setting you up for the next 3 or 4 days or down the line. And so then it's like everybody wants to dive into your story if you let them. And why not? Because then it makes the story richer.
It's an interesting thing because it sounds like they were cheering. And if you talk about the arena, and we'll get to your quotes just now, I love them. But in the arena, those people, it's weird that the ones some people close to you, it might be easier for them to be negative, whereas it's quite, I don't know. I thought it was actually easier to be a keyboard warrior, but maybe it's not the same thing because this is physical and they're in their face and that sort of stuff. And these people are actually cheering for you and wanted the story is, the initiative, the thing that you were doing was so great at the time. I actually wanted to do, I meant to do it this morning and look at the equivalent of what that would be raising funds now, because that was in 99.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, so, and then you ended off with, the goal was $1 million. I think you ended off with 1.7. So phenomenal, almost doubled the goal. And I think you talk about the halfway point too being very difficult. And but that's getting having people just constantly, they happiness is amazing.
Yeah,
it doesn't even matter if it's yours. I'm stealing that directly from Ricky Gervais, but and the afterlife. But that some people get that, and I think people that travel and are generally more open-minded, and they fit. They can fit into that. It's interesting that the Americans were a great part of your experience and took you in the whole time. I remember you explaining the mush that you got very good at, and it was very tasty, obviously, after a long ride. But the Americans sort of fattened you up.
Fattened me up. It's the only continent where we put on weight after cycling across it. But the reason why was because you're going to meet someone where they're going to tell you to meet. The easiest place to find is McDonald's because the golden arches just stick up, and then they'll treat you. But obviously the last person treated you as well. And so every night So I think we just got across America on McDonald's, literally.
Oh, really?
And it was interesting that you cycle across the country and you put on weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And America, are the highlights there, and other than the eating and putting on weight for the next leg? Were there?
Yeah, so the absolute generosity by the people. Look, there were more people, so it wasn't necessarily an Australian thing that they didn't take us in. There's just less people in the middle. But America, we were encountering people every day. And then the diversity of that country was what made that continent crossing very interesting. I mean, you're going from the Sarawakis and stuff in Arizona, and then next thing you're up in Pennsylvania, and it's just vastly different states. So every day was quite an adventure. Good road network, good people, and then obviously the access to food, the access to resources just made it quite easy. And there are a lot of people doing it. The ride across America is very popular. And you start to meet people doing ride on lawnmower across, and other people walking, and other people running, and it's an adventure at the time. Especially, it's a country that almost promotes adventure.
Correct. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. The freedom of as well. That's the ties. And you had to change route, and that became a lesson.
Yeah. So the original route was north over the Nevada mountain range, keep north all the way through to Chicago, but as we hit that Nevada region, and this goes back to our weather planning being relatively poor, it was now April, and we just went straight into snow. And we were taking a beating. I mean, you're cycling up this mountain range, and there's no shoulder, walls of snow around you. It's slippery. People coming past you, the snow is getting flicked up. So when we got to our place in Reno, or just south of Reno, the guy just said to us, "You're in for 2 weeks of this." But that's where we have to embrace the detour, and you can either get fixated on, I've got the goal, I'm going to brazenly push through it. There's a bit of arrogance in that, versus, well, is there another way to get there? And can we still cross the continent with relatively the same distance, pull down the lines of longitude or whatever, and look for a place to go? And that's where Phoenix, Arizona was a good option. And we just did a southern leg all the way through to Oklahoma, and then we came back up to our original leg. So the crossing wasn't one route, it was north, south, north, but got to the end. And
that's where I was talking about earlier with the trader's openness. Actually, it wasn't Kilimanjaro. We'll get to Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, that was a different story.
But openness was to like heed the warnings, because they knew more than you did, and they're like, this is really dangerous, actually.
Yeah, and I suppose it's about knowing what sounds are causing you to stop and pause. I think you don't want to just give up at every roadblock. You don't want to just stop at every hurdle. But that chapter in the middle is all around the idea that sometimes hurdles are there for you to embrace the detour and for you to actually change track. And in turn, that opens up other possibilities, So you've got to have that discernment. And I've used that in my career. I've used it obviously in my endurance sports, and that's, don't get fixated on, have a plan, but don't get fixated on the plan. And don't be too attached to how you think the plan should outwork.
Yeah, I was looking for this now. Every dead body on Mount Everest was once a highly motivated person. So it's like, ... maybe calm down. So it's also just like, it did make me think of that. I was like, the plan can change, but you can, and being open to listening to it is great. And then because you were out there in terrain that a totally different place that no one knew. And then Steve never been to the US, had he? So it was like totally new to you guys. So it's good to be aware and not like, I think you used that word arrogant. So yin and yang, like, cause you've got to be arrogant. Rich Mulholland spoke about this recently and the thing. So it's like, that you've got to be arrogant to think at 18 years old you can cycle around the world. There's a sort of confidence / arrogance that you think you could do that. You've got to have that. But then knowing the limits and listening is just I think it's an amazing thing that you did. From there, you go to Europe.
Europe. Yeah.
And that was where it's 500. I remember you reached 500,000. That's like proper middle now.
Europe was a bit of a holiday in a way. You get to the UK, you see all your peers. My family flew over. It was an easy cycle from John O'Groats to Land's End, top of Scotland to bottom of England. And then we crossed over to Amsterdam, and that's when the Kiwi that we met on the ferry ended up joining us for that leg. So it gave us a bit of a break from each other. And that I think was necessary. We had this third party. But yeah, we got to Italy and we had raised 500,000. But we were, at the same time, I think probably quite nervous about getting back into the Africa crossing. And we were quite depleted. We'd been out there for quite a while. And so we did have quite a big day 5 moment at that halfway mark. But the fact that we had raised 500 with half to go, okay, pick ourselves up again, get over to Cairo and do this, But Europe was very much sleeping under the stars, enjoying good food, easy cycling, own roads, own traffic lights, like it's geared for it.
Yeah. Wasn't Italy difficult? Or was
Okay, Italy was, because we didn't realize how hilly,
that's what I heard.
hilly it was going to be. So it was up and down. It was hard cycling. But you're surrounded by beauty and the scenes are epic. So at least you've got that little reward at the end of the day.
Yeah. And then a thing there was the comms barrier. I think like you'd been telling your story so much. And then one of the things I've noticed from my time spent in the US is that I have a theory that one of the reasons why they win often is they're so articulate. Like they've now totally bastardized the English language. The English would say, I'm not totally agreeing with it, political stance and that, but they're very articulate and be able, so they can sell really well because that's comms. And a lot of it, so it was difficult in that respect too, because you can tell your story.
Yeah. And so the opportunities were limited to raise funds, and to communicate what we were doing. But it was quite fun when we were able to, through someone was proficient in English and there was a bit of translation. It was quite nice to see the reaction in another language from someone who was hearing about the tour and responding to it. So it's not like we checked out in its entirety, but it did give us a little bit of a break from, because if you think about America, every night you get taken in, that person's going to ask you the same questions that the person the night before asked you. So you're spinning it. And in America, they were very interested in South Africa. They wanted to know about Mandela. They wanted to know about apartheid. They wanted to know about... So you've got 2 months of sharing the same story, and then you've got this sort of break in Europe just to enjoy the cycling.
That repetition almost becomes, remind me, I think you might have alluded to it. So it's like, made me think of, it becomes small talk. It's like almost like the small talk that the weather, like you get in, I noticed about an elevator, guys, if you ever get into an elevator and pick this up, because one of my superpowers is being awkward. So I live in that. And people do a couple things in the elevator. They look down or they look up. And then if you make eye contact, it's like, she's hot outside, hey? It's always the weather. It's always the weather. So I'll that last 2 lines, I'll say that out loud to randoms, and we're going to talk about the weather or look up and down, guys. Yeah. That's what we do, yeah. And then it becomes a bit of a joke, and I'm that awkward guy. I
must try that.
Yeah. So, I know that Steve met his partner on the way. You were a single guy the whole time. You didn't touch that. How was that?
I mean, it was fine. You didn't have much opportunities to meet people, and
But he managed.
I know, and the funny thing is, I don't know if I put this in the book. So we met Candace through a mutual friend who recognized us. We were at a church service and she recognized us. But Candace was from Tromsburg.
You didn't put that. I don't think that's in the book.
So that just blew my mind. She's from a sheep farming family in Tromsburg. So to meet her at our next big middle. Was just completely ironic, And then that's Stephen who got married. So he actually went from Rome, went back to the UK to spend some more time with her, and sent me to Cairo on my own, which was that ended quite badly. And then they communicated through the whole of Africa. And by the time we got home, I think it was almost a done deal. And soon after that, engaged, married. I'm going down next weekend for my goddaughter's 21st, his daughter.
Oh, amazing.
So it's just a crazy thing.
And you had the experience of the sheep farming in Oz, and you could have you could connect immediately.
Exactly.
It's like, I've done this. It's like,
I worked on a sheep farm.
Yeah, you worked there.
All work for food. Yeah.
Amazing. And then, but yeah, so the Cairo didn't go well. I remember that, yeah, you said that was like a very costly exercise. Was it Cairo that through the border, was Zambia? One of the borders. Both, you had to pay. Yeah. It was like the corruption in Africa.
Cairo
you got arrested.
We didn't have a visa, and the laws had changed.
And you phoned back, yes, and you warned him. That was cool, though, to get that back. That was quick thinking, I think. Yeah. I love that thinking when people do that in a WhatsApp group or whatever, and they let you know they've just gone through something at the border, like where you're traveling all the traffic there or something like that, and people go, think about others. But
again, because you're talking 99, so you're not posting on Instagram. Mm-hmm. You're not updating your Facebook status. I used to write postcards. I had a CD Walkman that I used to listen to my music on, but I only had enough battery for one disc a day. But when I was in trouble in Cairo and I needed to reach Steve, I managed to phone my dad, who then managed to phone Gatwick, who then managed to, on a loudspeaker, get hold of Steve.
Because you knew about the time he was landing or something like that. He would be there.
So it was quite, you have to go that route. You're not just quickly getting onto WhatsApp and saying, hey, Steve, get a visa in the UK before you come back here.
Yeah. Nice. That is incredible.
Yeah.
The story, it's not in the book, of how you met your wife. Was that after?
Yeah, we met so I was in varsity post the tour. So came back, did 4 years of studying at UKZN, and we met around my second or third year. Dated for a while before I then went to go and live in the East. So I lived in Thailand for a year and then came back. We continued to date, and then she went to live in London. So we were together for 8 years before we got married, but 2.5 years living in separate countries. Mm. Yeah.
And your dive instructor, sorry, I want to go back to that meeting and stuff, but you've triggered me. On another story, you were in the tsunami for a thing, but you haven't written about that at all, or have you? Just not in the book.
No, so it hasn't come through in any writing yet, I guess, but it's... So in Australia, I'd written the vision for the organization that I have now. Finished my degree, and I was a dive master. So I went to Thailand, worked on an island called Koh Phi Phi. And we were in the tsunami at the end of that year. But that just taught me how life can change in 12 seconds when you going from everything's normal to utter chaos in a short space of time. So my trajectory at the time was to just travel the world and dive. Thailand first, Red Sea next, Caribbean next, just carry on. But that moment was like, no, I'm going home. Like, I need to get involved with this work. Didn't take the Mercy flight. We stayed there for another month or so. Just defragged, spent some time with other instructors that I worked with, and then came home, and then I started my work. So that was January 2005. So I've just celebrated my 20th anniversary and went back to Australia to see friends on my 20th anniversary, which is where I wrote the vision for my business on the Australian soil, underneath the Australian sky. So it's just been these things are traumatic events, but they point you in a direction. They shift your trajectory,
I was thinking about it. You said you had 2 daughters. I got 2 sons, and I've got this thing that I've learned from somebody. It's the world gives you, it's the universe gives you what you need to evolve to the next level. So whatever it is, it sounds like something like you had these plans and they changed because of you quick existential like awakening or whatever. Like this is quick. This could be really quick. Got to go.
Yeah.
Get working. So you met your wife. You got married, and the 2 and your 2 daughters. That in your lifeline those are highs, huh?
Absolutely, yeah. So
how far apart are they?
They are 4 years. So it was Thailand, and then starting my business, Tony in London, coming back, getting married, and then we did an Africa trip, which was really nice. Took her through some of the places that I'd been to. But then first daughter 2013, second daughter 2017. Definite highs, eh?
Okay. I've got a question here. We're going to need to transition in and work out the best way to do this into your case study and your quotes. we in Cairo, just the Kilimanjaro. I don't want to leave that bit out because there's a massive learning there.
Yeah.
And then take it home with I guess that's the right that comes to the end. But I mean, and it seemed like you didn't go through what the illness was, Steve, and it sounded like you both got it. Was that later on? But
later on.
Yeah. Kilimanjaro. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, Kilimanjaro, we climbed it because it was there. And maybe this is where a little bit of that sort of unprepared, but potentially not arrogance per se, but...
Or taking on too much, maybe, yeah.
We're on an adventure, let's just do these things. So it was a call from the hospital to say, hey, you're in the Kilimanjaro area. There was a woman that wanted to climb the mountain too. So why don't you do it? Which meant a few things. Number one, didn't have the right gear to climb the mountain. So we climbed the mountain in our jeans and cycling gloves and like our fleece top. We were definitely on budget tours. But the lady that came to join us from the hospital, she was in her senior years and struggled a lot with the terrain. So we spent a lot of time getting to the camps. And we were arriving after dark rather than sort of 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so you can acclimatize and rest up. So it just became tricky. And we made an interesting call on the third day because we realized that she wasn't going to make it through the traditional path, that we were going to leave later and get to this place called the Anvil and then tie a rope around her and just pull her up the side of the summit. And by the time we got there, she was so broken. And shortly after that, she slipped and pretty much broke her ankle. So we had to default back to the original route. So by the time base camp came and we were ready for summit nights, I wasn't in a good way, but I was being quite affected by altitude. And we just left and you wake up at midnight and tents are, it's quite an interesting experience. It's 120k hour winds and everybody's leaving, everybody's nervous, everybody's quiet, and there's a string of lights going up to the summit. But at some point I found myself with this American guy who was in our group, and he had gone blind. I was feeling sick, and the guide had disappeared. I had fallen asleep behind a rock or something. Steve had pushed on. So it was just an utter comedy of errors from the start. And so I just made the call. I said, this was one of those moments. Am I just going to push through, or am I just going to call it, And I called it, but that did throw me a bit, because Steve came back and now he's done it. I haven't done it. And now you got to live with that failure for 2 days, And that's the whole point of the story, is that failure can either define you and it can become part of your identity, or you can use it to become better. So the moment I stepped off Kilimanjaro, I was a much better mountain climber than I was before I stepped on. And the amount that I learned about what it means to summit a mountain and the respect that you should give a mountain in the 5 days was immense. Everything from prep to gear to what altitude sickness is, from who you choose to climb with and your guides and everything. We just threw ourselves into that experience and hope for the best. And so now when I hike and stuff, I go with people that I respect, and I've learned a lot about what it means to tackle that type of risk. And your quotes with Everest, I mean, that's a massive undertaking, not to be taken lightly. But don't let failure cause you to become risk averse. Rather let it grow your intelligence so that you can get out there and do significant things.
Yeah, well, it's only a failure if you didn't learn anything. I guess are you going to go back? Are you going to do it ever?
Yeah, I'd like to, actually. And a lot of people have said to me it's something you should do. But I think I'd like to put a group together of people who know the middle, read the middle, and then we go out there and do it. I have done lots of taking guys on hikes we've got the Drakensberg. It's not Kilimanjaro, but it's enough of a terrain to give you a similar experience.
It's at Pietermaritzburg, it's a good training. Yeah. And then what's the word? Because I've heard people speak of Kilimanjaro and pole, slowly.
Pole, yeah.
Is it? How do you say it?
Pole, yeah. It's slowly in Swahili, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a good lesson.
Yeah. And then cheapest, the fractured ribs, bungee jumping, end of this trip. What did you get out of that? Sure, there's a lot.
Finishing strong, because I mean the last 5Ks, the last 10Ks of anything, it's that last piece where you are completely spent. And I always laugh about it in the trail running world. You can hear the finish line, and that's a critical moment. And so it was really about rather than allowing fatigue and the duration of this journey to get in the way, but drawing on the richness of the experience and almost becoming more reflective to help you push through. But there was a period there where I wasn't able to cycle with Steve because he had to be flown home, which meant that I could cycle with my brother. But it worked out that from the South African border to Johannesburg with a support crew, we could finish the ride together. Yeah.
Yeah, he came back for it. And okay, so he got sick. Did you both got sick, but you got better?
Yeah, we both got. Was probably severe dehydration. We thought it was malaria, but he needed to go home, get onto a drip.
Okay, sure. And then it was a great finish. And then how long? But we're going to transition now to your case study. But how long? We say we didn't celebrate enough. Do you? I mean, you've written a book about it now, so that's a great celebration of. But how long did it last? The euphoria and that sort of stuff from doing that sort of thing.
Well, as it is with these things, you end up being invited to a bunch of different talks and communities that know what you did. So there was probably a period of 2, 3, 4 months where it was a constant, I guess, recognition and opportunity to talk and whatnot. But I think because of what this tour taught me and how significant it was in my life, like it never left me. In the middle, the book just came from the fact that I was consistently talking about those stories. So and in sharing those stories, the gratitude was still there.
I love it that you can celebrate that. This is a great example of celebration because something that happened in 1999 and this is a celebration of it. And every time you talk about it is another celebration of it in a way, I think like. It's great. This case study, and we'll have this in the show notes links, guys. It's Shackleton, the greatest story of survival. I'll just play it here, and then we can watch it. Luke, I don't know if you want to come. Yeah, so we'll cut to that now.
Antarctica is a cold, isolated, and unforgiving place. And 100 years ago, it was as remote as space is to us now. In 1914, Ernest Shackleton set out to become the first man to cross the Antarctic continent.
Every step over unknown ground, I'd hoped that the fates would be kind to us. But the task was beyond our powers.
Everything went wrong, and incredibly, they managed to capture it all on film.
Millions of tons of ice pressed upon the little ship that had dared the challenge of the Antarctic. Our home was being shattered under our feet.
Your prospect on a piece of ice like this one, no one would ever find you. You'd be condemned to the sea forever.
The task is to reach land with all the members of the expedition.
Environmental scientist Tim Jarvis.
Australian explorer Tim Jarvis
is the only man to have ever recreated the harrowing journey of Ernest Shackleton.
I'm retracing Shackleton's path once more because I believe his powerful leadership is what we need now to save Antarctica from man.
We were a tiny speck in the vast vista of the sea. We had suffered, starved, and triumphed. We had seen God in his splendors. We had reached the naked soul of men.
If Shackleton's leadership has taught us anything, it's how to achieve the impossible, truly making this the greatest story of survival.
Yeah, so I absolutely love this. And what we're going to do, so we generate an article based on these episodes, and we'll have this, and I can go into analysis. We look at things in our 6 principles that we have. So, and we can look exactly how this works. I love this. It's an ad, it's a trailer, but it is gripping, and everyone would have heard it now and seen the video that are watching. Why did you pick this?
I think so naturally there's the journey element, there's endurance, but I think what really grabbed me about this particular story was because it was 100 years ago, and because whilst we crossed continents, he crossed and was looking to cross the most hectic continents that you would ever dream of crossing. But with all of the tools and resources and stuff that we have available to us, I think we've lost a bit of what he was able to tap into. And what I'm interested in is that comment that he says, we'd almost got to the core of our souls through that. And I wonder if the ease of life is almost dumbing down our senses and prohibiting us from really diving deep into our souls and getting to know what lives there. It's all too surface, it's all too easy, it's all too fast, it's all too accessible. And we can't recreate crossing the Antarctica for everyone. But the question for me has been, how do you recreate it for yourself? And in a way, the cycle tour was that opportunity for me at a young age, which I didn't ask for, but it did something to me. And so the question that I have for my kids and for the people around me is like, what is that moment that will do that for you? And if everything that's significant comes at the end of tough terrain, well, if we're going to avoid tough terrain, then where's the significance going to go? And then what are our stories going to look like? So it's that I was really captured by. And I mean, if you get into the detail of what Shackleton did and his leadership, not only he had to look after himself, but he was no man's going to get left behind here. And he led that group through. He kept them on an even keel through stuff that would turn any man insane. So it really is a powerful example of endurance and grit, or leadership at the same time, but what mankind is actually about. And I think we're losing that,
So I mean, it's incredible. I will have the links to it. The principle that does stick out to me is experiences replace messages, and because they've created this. You get to be part of this experience that happened 100 years ago, and the message is exactly what you said. And I think it's do hard things is what constantly comes out when I think about yours. So I'm excited for that. That's literally a month ago that trailer launched. So very, very cool. I'm going to go to your quotes now. The arena, do you know that? Do you know the arena off by heart?
No.
I know you didn't.
That's a long quote. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step is an easier quote to remember.
Yeah.
And look, it's a pretty cliche quote, but I think what I see and what I admire about Steve is that it's relatively easy to dream, but you meet a lot of people who've got those dreams and who know that they want to do something different with their lives, but just don't know how to start, And I think that was what the gift that Steve gave you was, that he taught me what it means to activate a vision. And it started by just rolling that first bicycle pedal out of Joburg, So the quote is just a great quote because it's around encouraging people, hey, don't overthink this, come up with a plan, but take the first step. It's going to change anyway. If you think that you've got to have all the I's dotted and the T's crossed and all your ducks in a row, it's not going to work like that. But do something that's going to activate it. And even with the book, it's like find a publisher and write a marketing plan. And then it activates it, So I'm always looking for that in my life. Like, I've got an idea, let me just kickstart it, and then it's in play.
That's ties into the trait conscientiousness. So there's, like you've said, the dreamers. There'll be people at the coffee shop across the road. They've solved the world's problems. They've got it written down on a sketch.
Yeah.
But I think you talk about being a fly on the wall and listening to dreamers or something like that.
Writing on their napkins and
then, but they don't go get it done. The entrepreneurs are conscientious in general, so they do. They take the steps and then they learn from the failures and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Is there? I think, who are your incredible machines?
Yeah, so I had some examples there. So I always look at the difference between chosen endurance and forced endurance. So I've definitely got my incredible machines in the chosen endurance world. People like Nathan Favre from New Zealand, just an incredible endurance racer, and then like Courtney Dalton, just an insane trail runner from the US. So just from a physicality point of view, incredible machines in their ability to succeed in those types of events. And then from like a forced endurance side, that's where I really lean in. So I mentioned Tito, he's a friend of mine, Theogen, who survived the Rwandan genocide, made his way to South Africa, and has built an incredible life here. And Mlondi and Ndlovu, who's a friend of mine that I met, who grew up in Inanda, wanted to be a dancer, but was told, you don't do that. You become a policeman or a teacher or a lawyer, you know. And these two men navigating a world that they didn't necessarily choose to put themselves into, but have done something significant with it. And so it's those two worlds that I always look for those incredible machines in. Those that choose endurance and do well in it, and those who are forced into it and navigate it. Because in both those worlds, you can get spat out the other side and it can break you. But those are 4 examples of people who've been able to succeed within it.
Perfect. Anything you want to end with?
Yeah, I think so. My encouragement to people is always that you are made for tough terrain. I think human beings are designed for tough terrain. And you will rob yourself of a deep learning that can come from placing yourself in tough terrain. And so it's just, don't shy away from it. Get yourself into it. Do something that's going to stretch you out of your comfort zone. Talk about the world of sports all the time, but there's other opportunities. And within that, you start to see the gems, and you discover what really sits deep within your soul. And I think it's just something I really want everyone to experience. Yeah. And I'm still experiencing it. I mean, I'm still mining.
Amazing. That's incredible. So guys, go get the book, The Middle. We'll have links to it on the site, in the show notes and we'll be giving one away as well. But yeah, it's been incredible. So the incredible Travis Gale, thank you so much.